what you create is one part, but also why are you creating it in the first place? Like that's the question to answer.
Definitely.
Why are we doing this? Why are we actually creating this content? What's our viewpoint on this? Who is it actually for? It's those foundational elements that you have to get right first.
I think that it's becoming harder and harder and harder to justify a
Yeah.
content strategy without it, because of the exceptional advantages that you have when you do put video into your strategy.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
Just a quick one before we get into the episode, because I've got an offer that I'm sure all of you will be interested in. AEO is something that every B2B marketing team is trying to figure out right now, and most just don't know where to start. But at Blend, we're offering a full AEO analysis of your brand's AI visibility, and we'll walk you through exactly what we found and what to do about it. From full prompt analysis against your competitors to a citation analysis, where we'll look at different content types and how you're being cited for those and mentioned in those, and what you can actually do to be mentioned and cited much more for your brand, and what content you should create going forwards, and how you comprise that strategy really. We will drop a note in the description of this episode in the show notes, and you can go over there, request your free AEO audit, and we will deliver that to you. Hi everyone, welcome back to Demand Decoded. Dan here with you as always, joined by Phil in the studio today. And in this episode, we're going to be discussing how to build a content operation that actually scales. Content is really like the backbone, the heartbeat of so many demand generation programs, especially when we think about how we're generating inbound demand and creating demand in new markets and actually drawing people in, connecting them with our business. Content really is central to that entire operation. How you actually deliver your message to a market, how you distribute, how you like engage with them. Content sits at the backbone behind all of this. But so many B2B content operations fail, not necessarily because of a lack of output, but because they were never properly grounded in what actually needs to work from the setup process, what you need to get right initially, and how you actually run an engine that ends up just running itself and gives you output that is perfectly grounded in what your ICP needs to understand, distributed effectively, and engages them at scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get into the podcast today, here's a quick word from our sponsors, HubSpot. Most businesses think they know their customers. They have the data, the records, the history, but it's scattered across 3 teams and 4 systems, which means nobody can actually use it. HubSpot connects it all. Every interaction, every support ticket, every conversation into one platform every team can work from. So when sales talk to a customer, marketing already know the full story. And when you know more, you grow more. Check out HubSpot.com, the agentic customer platform for growing businesses.
Something of a perpetual B2B challenge, one that's constantly evolving, and new opportunities are presenting themselves. But over, I think, the whole time that I've been in marketing and that content has been a core piece of it, this has been a very, very common and recurring organizational challenge, because content creation, whilst being central to modern demand generation, isn't something that fits within a typical B2B organization's duties and responsibilities. You can't put it with it doesn't belong with any one person outside of the marketing function, but you also can't sort of make it a workflow that the whole organization contributes to easily. So there's barriers. There's always been structural barriers to getting it right. And even when B2Bs, particularly the mid-sized B2Bs, even when they overcome some of those barriers, they start to create and generate content, and they appear to be doing so well, you can often see missed opportunities within what they create that will be holding back some of the results and performance they could achieve, because creating content is one part of it, but what you create is most important, and it isn't always possible to get it all right, even when you are achieving some sort of consistency and volume.
And what you create is one part, but also why are you creating it in the first place? Like that's the question to answer.
Definitely.
Why are we doing this? Why are we actually creating this content? What's our viewpoint on this? Who is it actually for? It's those foundational elements that you have to get right first before you move on to, let's do a podcast. We should post more on LinkedIn. Like, oh, why aren't we blogging? Like, oh, let's start this newsletter.
Yeah.
People often jump to like the tactical execution before they actually think about the foundational elements. And
Yeah.
that really starts with your point of view as an organization. Like, what is your opinion to the market? Where do you think things are going? How does your product, your service actually fit into that? And how do you perceive that, change to be happening? And like, where do you fit in all of this, I
Yeah.
suppose?
Yeah. We've said it before. A big part of being responsible for marketing is deciding what to not do, in addition to deciding what to do. And as you said, if you choose tactics before you answer the question about why and what, you're making it harder for yourself to select channels that make sense to what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So you need to be in a position to say, no, we're not going to do this thing or these things, this newsletter or this medium of content creation, because we know why we're going to do these other ones, rooted in that understanding of your place and purpose in the market. Point of view, I think, is a sort of crystallization in the heart of knowing your ideal customer, knowing how you position in their market, in their mind, in their world, and what you offer, and triangulating all of those things to understand, as a business, what's your unique take on the problem,
Yes,
and how you
exactly.
believe it should be solved. Which is something that will move with the times.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be fixed forever, but it stands you apart from others doing the same thing in the same market, and helps you to identify, the content plays that you're going to be able to sustain, and that are going to help you reach the right people in the right form.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the thesis behind everything you're trying to do, right? Which is the outlook and approach to the problem you're trying to solve, figuring that out. And then the next part is figuring out who that's for, your ICP, your personas, knowing actually who you're trying to solve this problem for, who you're trying to communicate to when it comes to content creation is critical to moving actually on then to, well, where do we distribute these things?
Yeah.
What formats do we create in? What mediums do we try out?
Yeah, I think, the ideal customer exists even before you identify it, right? And so I think the order of play there is very variable, and in reality iterating, because when people develop a product or start a business, the ideal customer is implicit in how they go about it. What's so critical is focusing on and bringing out that definition of that ICP into a usable form to guide everything else that you therefore do. And we've seen it many times over many years. It's getting better, I would say, on average, but so many businesses were operating without really a crisp, agreed definition of who their audience is,
for sure.
and who they're best for. So that's, as important as ever, more important than ever, if your content operations are going to deliver the results you're looking for, and you're going to be able to scale.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once you know who it's for, you've got the next step, which is to actually define where and how you're going to show up. And really, that comes down to understanding your audience as deeply as possible. And a lot of that will come down to research. It might be buyer surveys, it might be individual customer interviews, it might be like communities that you're part of, gathering insights there, events that you go to, just like qualitative snippets that you're picking up over a period of time. Essentially, however you can gather the insight for your particular ICP, your customers, about the content they consume, where they hang out and like consume that content, where they get industry insight is probably the way to like position this. Like, where do you actually go to get your information to be better, to know what the latest greatest things are? Where do you connect with other, CEOs, CTOs, whoever that persona is? Because that will identify the places then where you should be operating.
Yeah.
And this is the important thing to come first before you build the engine.
Yeah, it's like shining a bit of a light on that dark funnel. Understanding the platforms, the spaces, and the ways that people develop their understanding of their own profession to a certain extent, their category, their industry as well. Before they create anything that's a trackable signal to you. Now, of course, we're big proponents of self-reported attribution. So by the time somebody comes onto your website and converts, you can get a phenomenal piece of insight into where they engage with your message. But there's also a broader reality, which is where they're engaging with other messages that are not yours, but perhaps should be or could be. And there'll be a lot of correlation. The expectation here is not that you'll come back with 100 different channels that none of which are the ones that you're thinking of using or are using or that are like well understood. But there will be a broader set of factors that you can understand. And like you said, it doesn't, in theory, it shouldn't be hard to establish this kind of insight, but it can be a struggle for businesses to do it. But it begins with a mindset that you want to capture it. So, we know that you can record calls and you can extract insights from them. You can go to or you can host events and you can do research and interviews. You can do all of them if you're minded to do them. And so that's the beginning shift. Understand that this is audience insight is something that you need to and want to gather, and it can be qualitative and anecdotal. That's better than nothing at all.
Absolutely. Otherwise we're just guessing like where to distribute content. And there used to be, I don't know, like when I first started marketing, they were talking about like omni-channel marketing, where you kind of like need to distribute everything everywhere. And you've got like B2B companies that are posting on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's all kind of the same content, but it's just better to be in more places, because if you're in more places, surely more people are going to see it. But really, all you're doing is diluting your effort. And the fact it's become easier to be everywhere, I think, it's a good thing in a way, because it allows you to do more, but it is limiting when it comes to like the actual mental capacity to care and do a channel really well.
To do it well, that's crucial. I think it's really sort of dangerous to be drawn into that sort of ease, because for any channel to work, you've got to be strategic about it, you've got to understand it, you've got to optimize for it, and you've got to measure it. And that takes time and energy and budget, which doesn't expand as you add more channels to your roster. So the diversification of channels has to happen in a measured way that goes in line with sort of your scale, really, so that you've got the resource to activate that channel well. Yes, we can all put content anywhere we like, but it won't drive the result you're looking for if it isn't done thoughtfully.
For the channel. So
quite
examples here, I would bring up a ClickUp. I absolutely love ClickUp's content strategy. If you haven't seen it, well, you would have seen it at some point. It just might not feel like you've seen, a ClickUp product video, because you probably haven't. Because, these guys are on TikTok, Instagram, like YouTube Shorts, but like started on LinkedIn with their core foundational content strategy. But once they were able to prove out the brand impact of, these funny skits that they're doing, and then actually start to broaden horizons into new channels and start to, go through some sort of manufactured process of seeing an impact, expanding, doing more of it. Like ClickUp's whole content stream now is, well, it must be across every single channel because they're everywhere.
Right.
I see them.
Yeah,
but
that's awesome.
The contrast to that is like Adam Holmgren, who we had on the podcast a few episodes back, co-founder at Fibbler. Adam's content strategy is brilliant as well. Like, he's posting on LinkedIn every day about how he's solving this very particular problem for marketers, which is, paid media attribution. He's got a brilliant newsletter, but he's able to orchestrate that for himself for, two very particular channels that he knows very well. It's a different kind of content strategy, one that's still working, one that's got him from, 0 to 5,000 users now, I think it is, on Fibbler, which is crazy.
So
like,
cool. Yeah,
brilliant.
doing great stuff there.
I suppose the point is, like, when you're still new to this content creation engine, picking those 2-3 channels tops to actually get the ball rolling with is really important to prove that it works and know that you can build the engine and expand it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think marketing discourse has a very short memory. A lot of the time when we as a collective look at what work that like ClickUp are doing, for example, we forget that they've been on a journey themselves, and they started probably somewhere similar to what Adam's doing. They didn't just arrive with a content strategy that works across all those channels, and you can't necessarily just emulate it, because the bit that you can emulate might not be the bit that makes it work. The channel being on it isn't the key to success. No. It's the why and the what and the how. Most marketing success stories are achieved off the back of a long period of time of invisibility, where you don't see successes talked about, many failures, and often many years of growth to get to where you see certain behaviors being lauded as highly effective. Two other variables that are worth just using to sort of reassure yourself that you can make choices about this are, of course, your scale and your maturity. What's affordable to you is going to be a product as a team, and as a budget is going to be a product of money available. Funding is another one. A lot of businesses that have become quite well recognized, particularly SaaS, will have started with LinkedIn and YouTube advertising as predominant channels, and some quite large YouTube advertising budgets, but budgets that are available because of funding that they've achieved. So if you haven't got that, that's not necessarily going to be your play to achieve the scale and the success of that company. So recognizing that there's a journey, and that they've been on it, and that you're on it, and that what you're going to be capable of and what makes sense will change as you progress, means it's okay to start small and focused, because you'll get better results doing that than if you try to go broad everywhere without the budget or the expertise or the time to do any of it properly.
Monday.com is the one that springs to mind when we think about just
huge budgets for
eye-watering paid media budgets. And I can't remember the exact time frame it took them to actually generate profit in their business, but it was a good chunk of time, because they were just on this crazy charge to just grow as fast as possible.
Absolutely.
No matter what it takes, how much money it takes, grow at all costs.
Point of commonality between Monday, ClickUp, Adam, and anybody is they had a point of view. Like you say, what they were doing was rooted in and connected to a belief that they had a new take or a better take on a problem, and it just so happened to be a very existing problem. Project management at the time wasn't a new problem, but they had a take, and so they were activating that take through the content strategies that made sense to them given the circumstances they were under. I presume Adam's doing the same thing, and that's what we try to do here, and that's the way to approach all of this.
Also, just one point on the mindset whilst it's in my mind, it never fails to amaze me how much businesses are, slightly cautious to invest in their content strategy and paid media around content, but are more than happy to spend 10, 20K having a speaker slot at an industry event to, 500, 1,000 people tops if you're lucky. And after that one thing, that one content capture moment, it's gone. But if you're creating consistent content, well, you can reach 500, 1,000 people with every piece of content you create, or you can at least distribute it in a paid way to get thousands and thousands more than that. And I think there's this mindset around, the way I think about it is, even if you're doing a niche podcast for a niche business, or some sort of content generation, or you've got a newsletter and only a few hundred people have subscribed, well, if they're the right people for your business, how much would you pay to have them all in a room talking to them at the same time and them listening and nodding along? Because that's what content creation is about. And that's the mindset I like to think about.
You've highlighted something which I think is one of many asymmetric evaluations that happen in marketing all the time. The value of this really doesn't make much sense when you compare it with the value of that, and yet broadly we invest massively here and less so there. And again, I think that memory, like that short memory, comes into effect again, because so often the value or the perceived value of something is a product not of that thing on its own, but the brand on top of which it's being deployed. The heritage, the achievements, the history of the business behind it, propping up certain aspects of what appears to be high value. So I think there's a lot of sort of uneven considerations going on, and I think that it's not going to change, but it's worthwhile sort of being aware and alert to that, because as you say, these sorts of strategies can deliver even larger numbers of the right type of eyes on your message. The challenge is always, is it being implemented at the right time in the business's lifetime to justify the kind of investment that you might want to put into it? Those are the sorts of issues that we're up against here, but I think that's a different topic for a different day. But like you say, you can make an argument that spending 100K on this thing or might be better invested on powering this thing over here when you consider the ability to create a recurring, lasting impression on the people that matter.
Good point. I think whilst we're talking about problems marketing teams face with getting this running, let's talk about building the engine now, and spend a bit of time here. How we actually operationalize content creation, because the biggest thing that we're trying to get out of our content is what our subject matter experts in our organization think about the market. What is their point of view that we originally captured? They will be having the point of view because they understand the market, they understand the customers. The marketing team, if you work in a niche steel manufacturer, you probably aren't the subject matter expert unless you've been doing steel manufacturing and have gone into marketing afterwards. It's very unlikely that we are in like this privileged position where we market to marketers. It makes understanding them, relating to them a lot easier. If you're like in a previous role, I was marketing to like chief scientific officers and like lab directors and things. I didn't know.
Different ball game altogether.
They've got PhDs in whatever they've got. I don't even know, like probiotics or whatever. And understanding them meant I need to work with the internal subject matter experts in our business, the application scientists, to actually extract what matters to them. What are they looking for when it comes to solving this particular problem they have in the lab, and how do we communicate that effectively? Being able to get the time and the process in place to extract those expertise is probably the number one problem that marketing teams have right now,
and have faced for all of this era of marketing, digital marketing era, because those subject matter experts that that hold that constantly refreshed perspective, it's not their job to provide you with that, provide the marketing team with that insight. And even if it is made part of their job, it's rarely made so in a really defendable operational, actionable way. And then even if it's made part of their job, or even if it's agreed, like their capacity to do it, their capability to do it, their willingness to do it, these are all issues that have structurally created the problem for marketers. And so it's been one of the patterns of, I mean, failure is probably too strong a word, because lots of businesses have had some degree of success, but one of the patterns of imperfection in the content mechanisms within that business, because it's so hard to get what's needed out of those experts.
Yeah. And well, let's talk about how we actually do get it out, because
We're very fortunate that our ability to do that is changing all the time and rapidly, and we've got new ways that we can break down those barriers, which is really, really exciting time.
Like, if we were sat here 2 years ago, our response to this would be, well, you've got to get them on board and get them sat down and on camera, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and even if you go sort of a few years before that, you would have said, well, you've got to get them on board, which is easier said than done, and you've probably got to have a regular meeting with them. The marketing and product team meeting, where you try to sort of artificially create the environment to extract good stuff from them in a very pressured and time constrained way, which rarely worked. So jump forward and you're onto something really powerful, which is, well, we now need to do that, but we should record that as well, because we can then use that version of it more effectively than we could use the notes out of that meeting that we were trying to have.
Can we just talk about video a second? Because I don't think that you can actually have an effective content strategy anymore without video being a component of it.
Yeah, and I'm largely agreed with you. As always, I'm now thinking, oh, hold on a second. Is there any version? Is there any sort of like sizable exception to that rule? So, for example, does Adam, who's like really, really nailing his LinkedIn play, does he have a video strategy? The answer is probably yes. I just haven't checked like lately. So
he posts a lot of video. I don't know if there's what the strategy is behind it, because he's just one person. It's probably easier to orchestrate yourself rather than a business.
So I think that video is becoming more and more key to unlocking the potential of content and if you look at studies about what skills are in demand, what buyers are looking for, what channels are thriving, what mediums are performing, it all tracks back to video. So I think whilst it might not be true to say that you can't have a content strategy without it, I think that it's becoming harder and harder and harder to justify a content strategy without it, because of the exceptional advantages that you have when you do put video into your strategy. No doubt about it.
Well, the trouble is, without video, what did we have before? We had blog content, which was great, whilst it was actually appearing in search results and not just pushed down because of AI overviews. And that was our opportunity to educate the market using written format, not video format. But as blogs have become, less and less visible due to AI search just being so dominant now, the approach we need to take in order to actually get our viewpoint across and be visible somewhere is different. And that lands on video, ultimately, to be the source that's consumed on multiple channels that are currently unaffected by AI. And even when you look at the studies now coming out of AI cited sources, YouTube being such a large one, particularly on Gemini, it's like, well, we're being like forced, right?
Yeah, I think when you look at who your ICP is and you look at what channels and mediums they use, increasingly video is becoming a non-negotiable part of being effective in those places. Absolutely. You would struggle to outperform or outcompete a vendor that is really leaning into video as a format if you were only doing written output,
Yeah.
across a number of channels. Absolutely.
Yeah. I just wanted to interrupt this episode to tell you about another show that's in the HubSpot podcast network, Nudge, hosted by Phil Agnew. Nudge is the UK's #1 marketing podcast, breaking down the hidden psychology behind what we do and why we do it. There's no BS, no fluff, just smart, science-backed insights that actually work. Recent guests include Rory Sutherland, Robert Cialdini, and Dan Pink. Marketers will love this show. I know you will, because I do. And it's because it discusses the psychology behind customer decisions and the secrets to successful marketing. And in one recent episode, I'll pick on Robert Cialdini's episode because it was really, really insightful. It spoke about 16 years ago, there was a chain of Chinese restaurants that wanted to increase sales without changing price. They didn't change the product, they didn't change the service, the chef, the food. Instead, they just changed 2 words on their menu and increased sales by 18%. They are the small nudges that you can make in marketing, in sales, to actually make a big difference to sales and to revenue. Listen to Nudge wherever you get your podcasts. Right now, every B2B marketing team is trying to figure out AEO, where they stand, whether it matters for them, and what they're supposed to actually do about it. The best place to start is knowing where you stand. We're offering a full AEO analysis of your brand's visibility across AI search engines, how often you're mentioned, what you're being cited for, and how your competitors are showing up. Then we'll walk you through the findings on a call with clear next steps. And we're doing all of this for free. You can request your analysis in the show notes below. And okay, so back to operationalizing it, because video being the core input is really an advantage to give you everything from the output ultimately. But capturing video doesn't have to be as hard as it always has been, right? Where even doing like what we're doing now, we have to give up an hour of our time to sit down and podcast. And not all of your subject matter experts will give you that. They might not have the time on a regular cadence to be able to give you everything you need. Great if they do, and that is a first step to actually operationalizing it, getting down a solid cadence and schedule of when you like meet, sit down and extract information from them. But we got to be thinking about all of the opportunities that we have to capture content now. And I think back to when I was at one of the Demand Gen meetups in London, and George Boot was talking about like personal branding, and like he had his like, I don't know, it was probably like a pint of beer or something at the time, like just sat on the table and like brought his phone up, and I was like, oh, what's he doing around the back of there? And like he just started recording himself from here, like just taking that opportunity to record content. And the company he was working for at the time, I don't know what he's doing. I think he's in Australia doing something with crypto now, which is like crazy. But Justin and Grant, who were really the subject matter experts in his company at the time around payments, those guys have just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube in 8 months on a podcast called The Payment Shed. And yeah, I was chatting to Justin, and he was like, well, he's just started going to events and just started like recording himself, like walking around, chatting to some of the subject matter experts at the vendors themselves, and then started getting invited to like speaking opportunities there to actually have those conversations on stage, and like it's just absolutely blown up.
Brilliant.
Anyway, bit of a sidetrack. My point is, your subject matter experts at your company will be talking to customers all day, every day. They'll be talking to your internal team about problems they are solving. Some information will be sensitive, but a lot won't be. A lot can be reused and repurposed. And now we have tools like Ask Elephant, like cool recording software that can extract information immediately after the call that you can set up and use. Every meeting that your subject matter expert has where they want to be recorded, they can be, and you can set up workflows to extract that immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be the source of a whole range of outputs, which is one of the newer, more exciting avenues available to us. Just going back to getting your subject matter experts on video, something that I've seen over the years is that I think video can raise people's sort of defenses a little bit, right? And it tends to be viewed by people who aren't like
Yeah.
in the industry of creating it as quite a scary commitment, right? It has connotations to it. Funnily enough, however, I think that doing something like this, where you invite subject matter experts to have a conversation on a topic, is, if pitched right and presented right, is way more likely to succeed and way better for them than some of the alternatives that I've seen attempted over the years. Not unusual in the past to hear businesses that were trying to solve this problem say, well, that this group of subject matter experts should all of a sudden start doing a webinar a month.
Yeah.
Plan, prepare, present, and ship a webinar, to fill the content gap with their knowledge of the subject.
Yeah.
Or, simply in, perhaps even earlier than that, suddenly now just start writing a monthly newsletter to customers to fill the content gap. Those are two failure modes that I've seen fail, way more often than they've succeeded. Now, there are businesses that do regular webinars. I'm not saying it's not possible.
Yeah.
But when it's been mandated and pitched as a solution to this problem, I see lots of reasons why it can fail or struggle. But if as a marketing team you take away the effort of preparation and of production, and you simply invite those people to spend time with you discussing their field, then you've got great content that is way easier for them to provide and to contribute to you than many of the other things that they could be asked to do.
Exactly. Our job as a marketing team is to make the barrier of entry for your subject matter experts as simple and as low as possible. That's a good way to think about it, yeah. How do we get them to sit down and just talk to us? Because the fact that they are going to be industry experts, they've likely been in the field for, a decade plus, some 40, 50 years even perhaps, and like they're going to be passionate about this stuff. They're going to enjoy sitting down and having a conversation about what they are super passionate about and what they enjoy doing. Your job is just to make having them there and make that conversation as easy as possible.
I agree. Yeah, totally. Quite unlike asking them to think about how to express that information, in a usable format. Totally agree. Totally agree. And then, as you said, with the tools that are available to us now, we can have our eyes and ears on sources of content and expertise that go far beyond the face-to-face time that we can spend with our team. Sales calls, customer service calls,
documents they're producing
documents
as well,
they create,
proposals, like
all of it.
Yeah, anything they're creating, we now have this amazing thing called AI at our fingertips to be curating that in different ways. And that also then goes into the repurposing workflow as well. If we are saying, and we believe that starting with video puts you in the best position possible, well, we've now got, Claude projects for every single output that we require to be able to feed in a transcript and get 10 social posts, then use Opus clips to be able to go and cut up the long form video like instantly into 35 shorter clips of that. Like, the tools around us now make operationalizing this content workflow just much easier, and it makes it possible for smaller teams to be able to execute at a larger scale as well, and at a cadence that your audience might require.
Yeah, I mean, achieving scale in terms of frequency, cadence has always been, a challenge and a barrier, because, in an ideal world, most businesses would historically have put out much more volume than they did. Now, the ones that chose to prioritize quality over pure quantity, I applaud them. I'm grateful that they did. But if they were able to do both, then they would have been in a better position to reap, measurable rewards quicker that were, visible to the stakeholders in forms that they wanted, which is, we've created this content, it's driving our ICP into our world, and we're seeing it in the form of pipeline and revenue.
Yeah.
But quite often, content strategies haven't necessarily generated the visible, impact.
Yeah.
To get the additional investment to go even further and to do it in more channels because of the fundamental scale challenge. So we are in a phenomenal time of opportunity now where the same team we had before can now operate at a scale that they probably couldn't have done previously.
Yeah, for sure.
And to your point, we've now got all of these inputs. We've got this wide array of sources of content that we can start to aggregate. We need to think systematically about how we utilize it, build systems and prompts and tools to transform that into what we need. But the same team you have today can do that much more effectively with tools that exist at our disposal than they would have before.
Yeah.
Far.
Yeah. I don't think you should have to hire to start this.
No, indeed. It makes the resource you've got able to do things that they would have probably liked to do all along, but would have taken time that they didn't have for the most part.
Yeah, it's the barrier to entry as well. Like you don't need a studio. Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's like people are almost put off by creating video, for example, because they don't have all the equipment. They don't have 4 cameras and professional mics and all this.
Yeah.
Well, like go back to the first episode of Demand Decoded.
We didn't let that stop us.
Yeah, it's horrific. If you did, like, please don't actually. But honestly, just starting with what you've got, like in whatever best space you have available to you, with the equipment that you've got, like just start.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's it may be the furthest thing from possible to get all of the people that you want to contribute into the same physical space anyway, right?
Yeah.
Like we're fortunate, but this could be an impossibility for some. But as you say, we've got the tools. You've got the platforms to be able to record this stuff. No problem.
Yeah.
I think there's value in like leveling the field. I think if you're having to record video, remotely across 2 different endpoints, it's a bit strange. I think when one endpoint looks like this and the other endpoint looks like a stock background from Teams.
I agree.
I think there's merit in like leveling the field there, but like you say, it's not a barrier.
Yeah.
And actually, we should treat everything as an opportunity to lower the barrier. Do it where you are. Do it with the equipment you've got. Do it without having to prepare heaps.
Yeah.
We'll take that away and work with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing, when we think about like volume and outputting at scale, there's always a risk of inconsistencies appearing. So it is important to consider how in all of the outputs that you've got, you maintain a level of consistency around like tone of voice, your ICP, who you're doing it for. And
most definitely,
you can do that via like adding knowledge into like Claude projects and ChatGPT, like custom GPTs, but also like obviously we're going to be officially launching Blend Core in a couple of weeks, which is super exciting, which is a managed, structured knowledge vault of information that can be stored about your business, your ICPs, your customers, your tone of voice, brand details, product details, so like all the information you would need in a structured format to be able to draw down from in AI to maintain a level of consistency, because there's such a risk with high volume outputs in AI that even within teams, within your marketing team, you will start to see a lot of inconsistencies appearing about maybe how you position this certain thing, or about like who it's actually for, or what this service truly is, because they might be using an output from an old sales deck or something that is just not currently right about your business. So having some central repository of information to maintain consistency across all AI outputs, I think is, well, it's essential right now.
Yeah, exactly. The use of AI has driven and to a certain degree necessitates a degree of decentralization of information, duplication of information, and dilution of information. And, maintaining a canonical version of key information like that is very, very hard in a massively distributed and diluted, organization.
Yeah.
And we're seeing this become a bigger and bigger problem as teams are embracing AI more and more. We're going to, I think, and see a shift where the governance of AI's output becomes more and more of a hot topic, and a centralized, dependable, canonical store of business truth that is accessible by all, AI mechanisms in your business, and that isn't exposed to the polluting effect of, your mass information storage, everything in SharePoint. That's too much and it's too inconsistent to be reliably truthful.
Yeah.
Having this system of truth for your AI engines is going to become critical.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're launching Blend Core, because we want to be able to put certain things about our business in one place and know which version is being used and be able to update it, whilst logistical knowledge comes in at the sort of prompt level. So you'll put the most recent recording in it when you need it, but you don't want to be adding all of your key business information over and over and over again. So that's going to be huge, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think last thing to probably touch on for this episode is measurement, because this is often a gap to getting a true content engine up and running, and it's the cause of many being shut down too soon, because it can be really hard to measure like the things we do around content generation, because there is no linear attribution between your LinkedIn post or your podcast episode in particular. Well, how do you actually measure that and prove its effectiveness to your boss, the board? It can be really hard to justify more investment in areas that you don't have direct attribution on. And I think the best way to go about this is it's really about understanding the early signs of success to get buy-in, and not jumping all the way from 0 to 100 to have huge investment up front. It's doing something cost effective and affordable to start seeing early signs of success that you can then scale beyond that. And what I mean is, firstly, we want to know, is this the right format and are the right people engaging in the right place? Because if they're not, then, well, it's hard to actually justify to do more of it just purely based on who is actually engaging with this. Because you're not going to start a podcast and get 100 high intent leads immediately. And that also is a question to answer, which might be like, oh, okay, we're doing this thing, how many leads are we going to get from it? Well, that is a real thing to actually overcome, right? Because the answer is, well, we don't know yet.
And even more so, that's not what's important.
Exactly.
That isn't what we should be using to assess the validity of this approach that we want to take. So the re-educating the stakeholder group, I nearly called them the stakeholder class then. The stakeholder group is part of what's needed here, because we have to change perceptions around what we measure and why, which is easier said than done in some circumstances too. But it is the challenge of being a modern marketer, right? Knowing that what you measure isn't always what is directly output from the work that you do.
Yeah. When I think about content strategy, though, I rarely think about it as a single channel, particularly when I think about the word content strategy in particular. I'm not thinking that equals YouTube or that equals podcast. So
correct.
And I think that is a good way to then frame measurement as well. We're not just thinking about our podcast when we think about our content strategy effectiveness. We're thinking about, what does that create from it? What content does that then create to feed LinkedIn? What does it create to feed YouTube, to fill our newsletter up, to create, blog posts that go out to subscribers. All of these kind of things create this connected system of metrics for each of those channels that also matter. So like if you are getting, more high intent leads through LinkedIn as a result of like boosted personal profile thought leader ads that are from podcast clips, like, well, you kind of need to then attribute that to the source material. And it's it's creating the connected suite of measurement that all roll back to the core content strategy. Yeah, sure, at a marketing level we can separate those out and actually see how our channels are performing individually and what gets more impressions and things like that. But also think about the difference in channels. Like 100 podcast downloads is very different to 10,000 LinkedIn impressions, because if somebody sits down to listen to an hour of you speaking in depth on a particular topic, they're extracting a lot more trust and connection with you than if they just read 2 sentences on LinkedIn. So like the actual format requires a different form of measurement as well. We can't just take every single channel to be the same.
It's in order to participate in one channel effectively, you need the outputs of other activities that you're doing. So if you, in your example there, if you look at how effective you are on, within a certain LinkedIn area, and you say, well, we're effective, if you then don't produce what it is that makes you effective, then you can't expect the effectiveness to continue. So you have to sort of say, well, what are the factors that make us effective there? And like you say, confer the benefit back to the original source, because you'll probably see, there'll be hotspots within your performance that favor certain content, video clips, for example, within thought leadership ads. Stop creating those video clips, you're not going to have that hotspot in the effectiveness. What you also just said was quite a long way of saying that measurement has become harder, in the sense that fewer of the measurements that are available to us are correlated with really the business success. And I think we agreed a while ago that marketers could spend their entire lives trying to establish a truly representative method of measuring everything. But you've got business KPIs and you've got, channel performance metrics, and you need to use both, but not confuse or conflate them to the point where you're telling stakeholders that because a channel metric is good, things are working. You need to be showing them what you're seeing as an end result from the efforts, and you make the decisions about where to balance and where to put the effort behind in terms of your content strategy, your channels, and your mix. I think is the long and short of it.
And if you are trying to justify more investment, more resource for these channels, tying them into those business KPIs will be really useful. Because if you can say that, well, our best performing, our highest conversion pipeline actually generated via our podcast, that's a really useful thing to know, and will give you more investment in that area without doubt. Or if you can show that actually we did a survey on our customers to see what content they listen to and if they're subscribed to our YouTube channel, customers that are subscribed to our YouTube channel actually churn, at this reduced rate, or they have a better ACV by this. Like, just understanding the connection between the content you're creating and the business output and impact of that is really important to start establishing more investment and growth in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you put yourselves in the shoes of a bigger organization, when an executive approves a sizable budget for marketing, and then the marketing function reports back on results and performance, they're not going to be scrutinizing individual channel metrics, or they shouldn't be.
No,
they're going to be taking a different view, which is spend the budget more or less at your discretion to achieve a result that will measure in the form of directional metrics, cost to acquire customers, pipeline value, etc., business KPIs. And so that should sort of steer us in terms of separating those two concerns and using one to achieve another and report that other one.
I I was recording with Josh a couple of days ago, and he basically, we diverged into attribution, and he said, like, if your CEO is asking you about channel metrics, just don't tell them.
It's the wrong, it's the wrong
say,
question to be
you
asking.
Don't need to know.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with that. It's the wrong question for them to be asking.
Yeah.
First and foremost. So I guess it's probably fairly unlikely at scale. There's obviously lots of scenarios where there's a lack of trust between certain teams, and but it is not what they should be interested in. And I think to that point, marketers need to be comfortable with not withholding that information, but like you say, knowing what's useful to talk about and what isn't, because the problem with those numbers is they're so misleading when you don't understand the full landscape. They can take you down such a rabbit hole, and the conversation will not be productive, and the decisions that are made might be very, very, very counterintuitive as well. So definitely not the right topic of conversation.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think we should wrap it up there.
All right.
Now we've covered measurement, but
Agreed.
like, content is fascinating. It's probably one of my favorite things to do, is creating content. One of the most essential things to do, I think, for any effective inbound demand gen like play that you have going.
Absolutely.
And hopefully this shed a bit of light on how you can start to build that engine effectively, because it is still something that it feels like everybody has figured out, because there is now never been more content available to us. But it's amazing how many marketers I speak with that like still battle with this every single day.
Yeah. And when you think about when you really stop and think about the number of brands or people that you see sort of nailing it in what you're exposed to, it can come down to quite a small set, actually. Like you say, it can feel like this is a done deal because there's a constant onslaught, but I think there's a lot of runway still.
Absolutely.
Because you don't see the ones that aren't cutting through and making headway. They're invisible to you most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's wrap it up there. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and we will catch you next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks for listening to the episode today. Before you head off, if AEO has been on your mind and you're not sure where to start, here's something worth doing right now. We're offering a full AI visibility analysis completely free. We'll look at how your brand is showing up across the major AI engines, what's influencing those results, how competitors compare, and what you should do about it. Then we'll walk you through all the findings on a call. Actual findings too, specific to your business with real next steps. Not a template, not a PDF, a proper analysis. You can request yours by clicking the link in the description below.